A very good morning to all of you. And this morning I would like to continue studying the subject of times in the Bible. Last week we have seen something about the times of ignorance and the times appointed and what they mean. And today we are going to look at something that is very prophetically significant, and that is called the times of the Gentiles. Turn with me please in your Bibles to the Gospel of Luke chapter 21. Luke chapter 21, and we will read verse 24. Luke 21:24. And they shall fall by the edge of the sword, and shall be led away captive into all nations. And Jerusalem shall be trodden down of the Gentiles, until the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. So we are going to look at the times of the Gentiles. I'm sure you have heard this phrase before, you have read it in the Bible, but sometimes you may not be able to fully understand what this means. What are these times of the Gentiles? Now, like I've said, they have a great prophetic significance because they encompass a very long period of time in history. And a lot of events have taken place during this time called the times of the Gentiles, which have, like I've said, prophetic significance, and we're going to look at that. So please do pay attention and try your best to grasp as much as you can of this subject, because it certainly will help you not only to understand a little bit of prophecy in the Bible, but it will help you to apply prophecy in the sense that you look at the world and the situation and the events that are taking place, and you would be able to understand where the world is going and how the Bible has already prophesied these things that are happening right now before our eyes. So it will help you to understand the situation of this world. So I'm going to encourage you to please pay attention. So the times of the Gentiles, as I've said, encompasses a very long period of time, but basically it is a time when Gentiles rule over Jerusalem. All right, so it is a time when Gentiles rule over Jerusalem. It's a time when Gentile overlordship is there over Jerusalem. So this is something that is going on right now, if you know that. Yes, Jerusalem is really under the control of the Jews. There is no doubt about that. In 1967, in the Six-Day War, they won back Jerusalem. But you see, if Jerusalem is the heart of Israel, the heart of Jerusalem is the Temple Mount. And the Temple Mount is still under Gentile overlordship. The Muslims have a mosque there, the Dome of the Rock, and the Al-Aqsa compound, and they have, I guess, 2 mosques or something like that, and they still do not allow the Jews to come on the Temple Mount. So in one way, Jerusalem is still under the overlordship of Gentiles. You know, a Jew cannot go to the Temple Mount anytime he wishes. There are about 4 hours in a day that he can visit there, and even in those 4 hours he is bound by rules. A Jew cannot praise God on that Temple Mount. He cannot pray there. He cannot say his Jewish prayers there. He does not have the freedom to do anything religious on that Temple Mount. He can go as a visitor, look at the place and come back. He cannot do anything. Nor can Christians go there and pray. Nobody can. Of course, we Christians don't need to have any outward expression of prayer. We can always pray in our hearts. That's what we do. So we can do that, but if you want to kneel down there and things like that are not allowed. So Jerusalem is still under the overlordship of Gentiles. So the times of the Gentiles are still going on. We're going to look at what the Bible says about these times of the Gentiles. So we'll divide this study into 3 parts: the beginning of the times of the Gentiles, the continuation of the times of the Gentiles, and finally the end of the times of the Gentiles. So the beginning of the times of the Gentiles. In the Bible, when you look at what happened in the Old Testament with the Jews, you can understand that almost accurately the times of the Gentiles began in around 606 BC. In 606 BC, Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, ascended to the throne of Babylon. He succeeded his father to the throne of Babylon. And that was around 606 BC. And officially, in 606 BC, the times of the Gentiles began. The times of the Gentiles began in 606 BC. Of course, that's when he came to power, when Nebuchadnezzar came to power. He did not immediately attack the southern kingdom of Judah in 606 BC, but he just came to power. But his ascension to power marks the beginning of the times of the Gentiles. But the actual times of the Gentiles began in two parts. When Jerusalem was attacked, it was taken over by the Babylonians, and then the people of Jerusalem were taken captive. It happened in two parts. The first one, look at 2 Chronicles chapter 36. 2 Chronicles chapter 36. That's the last chapter in a Hebrew Bible. That's the last book and the last chapter in the Hebrew Bible. Look at 2 Chronicles chapter 36, and we will read verses 5 through 7. Verses 5 through 7. Jehoiakim was 25 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned 11 years in Jerusalem, and he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord his God. Against him came up Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, and bound him in fetters to carry him to Babylon. Nebuchadnezzar also carried of the vessels of the house of the Lord to Babylon and put them in his temple at Babylon. This happened around 598 to 597 BC. All right. You remember the Old Testament is counted not like how we count, from 1 onwards, but you count from 0 back to 4004 BC. All right, so you come from the other side, 598 to 597 BC. That's the time of the first deportation. The first deportation to Babylon. So we read here that Jehoiakim was a wicked king of Judah, the southern kingdom of Judah, and he did evil in the sight of the Lord. Of course, that was not the reason why God gave up Israel or Judah into the hands of Babylon. All the kings, most of the kings of Judah were sinning against the Lord, engaged in idolatry, and led the people into apostasy. If not all the kings. There were good kings in Judah. There were many good kings like Jehoshaphat, Hezekiah, Josiah. These were all good kings. But the others led Israel into apostasy, and God gave them a lot of time. God gave them the example of the northern kingdom of Israel. The northern kingdom of Israel went into captivity to Assyria in around 720 BC or 721. So they went to Assyria. God destroyed Israel. God gave them up into the hands of their enemies, and they went into captivity to Assyria much before Judah. And Judah had enough examples to learn their lesson and turn to God and walk with God. But they did not do that. Instead, they tempted the Lord. And God finally gave them up into the hands of Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon. Of course, before God did that, he sent many prophets. You will read about that in 2 Kings chapter 25. God sent prophets. You know, they came early and they preached and tried to turn the people back to God so that God would not have to punish Judah. But they did not pay heed to the words of the prophets. They rejected the prophets, they mocked them, they killed them. So God finally gave them up into the hands of the Gentiles. And this is the beginning of the times of the Gentiles. That's the first deportation, as I've said. Now also look at this other passage in 2 Chronicles chapter 36. Look at verses 19 through 21. Verses 19 through 21. And they burned the house of God and brake down the wall of Jerusalem and burnt all the palaces thereof with fire and destroyed all the goodly vessels thereof. And them that had escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon, where they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia. Verse 21. To fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths, for as long as she lay desolate, she kept a Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. Now, if you look at this first deportation that took place during the days of Jehoiakim, King Jehoiakim, Nebuchadnezzar came and he carried Jehoiakim to Babylon, and he carried the vessels of the house of the Lord to Babylon and put them in his temple. But the temple was still standing. It was in the second deportation, 587 to 586. This is the second deportation. This is the first one. It is in the second deportation that Nebuchadnezzar destroyed not only Jerusalem, but he actually destroyed and burned the temple of God. It says, and they burned the house of God in verse 19, and brake down the wall of Jerusalem, and burned all the palaces thereof with fire. This was the final destruction of Jerusalem. And this time, even the temple was razed to the ground. It was burned with fire. It was destroyed. Remember, this was the temple built by Solomon. That great temple, the most beautiful edifice on the face of the earth in those days. And God gave it up. God just gave it up to be destroyed because the children of Israel blasphemed him by offering sacrifices to devils and to idols. And God gave them up. This was, of course, in the days of Zedekiah. This was Jehoiakim and this was Zedekiah. So these were the two deportations at the beginning of the times of the Gentiles. As I've said, the times of the Gentiles begin with the ascension of Nebuchadnezzar to the throne of Babylon. But then the actual times of the Gentiles were put into effect when Gentile dominion of Jerusalem began. But that again is taken a step forward, and it is completed in the destruction of the temple. This is very, very important. The temple is burned. It is destroyed. Again by Nebuchadnezzar. So this is how the times of the Gentiles began. But you see, that's not the end. That's not the end of the times of the Gentiles. That's only the beginning of the times of the Gentiles. The times of the Gentiles continued after the destruction of Jerusalem and the temple in Jerusalem. I want you to keep this in mind. Jerusalem is the most important city in the world, and the Temple Mount is the most important place in Jerusalem, where Zion also is on that same mountain. Of course, there is a lot of dispute as to where Zion is and what the exact spot of the temple is and all that. Well, some people argue that the temple was never built on the Temple Mount, but it was built in the city of David, south of the Temple Mount. Now, all these arguments are there, but the Jews surely know where the temple was. All right, and all these arguments that are made about the location of the Temple Mount are useless, because when the time comes, that temple will be built in the place it should be built. Now, even if this coming third temple, as it's called, would be built in the wrong place, it doesn't matter, because it's not going to be a holy temple, you see. It's going to be, the presence of God is not going to descend and be there in the holiest of holy places upon the Ark of the Covenant. No. This is going to be the third temple where the Antichrist would sit and claim to be God and demand worship. So it doesn't matter where that temple is built, because the millennial temple described in the book of Ezekiel chapter 40 onwards is going to be a different temple altogether. Not the temple that the Antichrist would be instrumental in building in Jerusalem. So please lay aside all those. Don't dig too deep into these matters as to where exactly the spot is where the Temple of Solomon was built. Don't get into those things. It doesn't matter where it was. When Jesus Christ comes back and he builds the temple of God, then he knows where it was. He's going to build it on exactly the same spot. All these arguments about, is the Dome of the Rock exactly upon the holiest of holy places or not, is useless. Christians, don't get into those things. You need to be careful. But you must remember that the Temple Mount is most holy in God's eyes. If there is any place holy on the earth, it's that place. Right now, it is under the dominion of the Gentiles, because this is still the times of the Gentiles. So you have here the first and the second deportation. In the first, the people were taken captive to Babylon. Even in the second, the kings were taken captive. In the first one, the gold and the articles of the temple were taken to Babylon. And in the second, the temple itself was burned. But these times of the Gentiles continued. Now we know that the Babylonian captivity was only 70 years, as we have just read in 2 Chronicles chapter 36. It says in verse 21, "For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. Jeremiah clearly prophesied that the captivity of Judah would be for 70 years, 70. And after that, we know that in the reign of King Cyrus, the Jews came back and they built the temple once again, and they built the walls of Jerusalem. So, in spite of that, the nation of Judah, the southern kingdom of Judah, continued under Gentile dominion. Even after Judah came back to Israel under the leadership of men like Zerubbabel and Ezra and Nehemiah, they came back, and you remember, they built the temple, they built the altar in the temple, and they built the walls of Jerusalem. But they were not a free nation. Firstly, they were under the reign of Babylon, then they were under the reign of Medo-Persia. So they were never free. The times of Gentiles continued even after the return of the captivity. And we are going to look at that. In order to understand what happened in these times of the Gentiles, we need to go to the book of Daniel. Let's go to the book of Daniel. And we'll begin in chapter 2, Daniel chapter 2. Daniel chapter 2, we'll read verses 37 and 38. Daniel 2, 37 and 38. Thou, O king, art a king of kings, for the God of heaven hath given thee a kingdom, power, and strength and glory. And wheresoever the children of men dwell, the beasts of the field and the fowls of the heaven hath he given into thine hand, and hath made thee ruler over them all. thou art this head of gold. All right, here you have this pagan king Nebuchadnezzar, and he saw a dream. You know the story. And Daniel was called upon, and Daniel said, not only will I tell you what your dream was, O king, but I will even give you the interpretation, because interpretations belong to God. So Daniel goes ahead and explains the dream to Nebuchadnezzar. In his dream, he saw this great image, a great colossus, right? And he saw that this great image was made of various metals: gold, silver, brass, iron, and then finally iron mixed with clay. These are the five metals that were used, or rather four metals and clay used in the making of this great image that Nebuchadnezzar saw. And in all probability, this would have been the image that Nebuchadnezzar would have made later on and demanded that all his subjects worship that image. He would have made a statue of himself, just like he saw in that dream or in that vision. But you see, this dream that he saw was prophetic in nature. That's why God gave an interpretation to it. And Daniel says, that head that was made of gold are you, O King Nebuchadnezzar. So here you have this. Nebuchadnezzar is the head of gold. He is the head of gold, the head that is made of gold. So here is again Nebuchadnezzar around 606 BC, bringing in the times of the Gentiles. He became king of Babylon in 606 BC, and then he attacked the southern kingdom of Judah, and the first deportation was in 598 to 597 BC, and the second deportation was 587 to 586 BC. And he is the head of gold. But in Daniel's interpretation, he goes ahead and explains the meaning of the other parts of that colossus, the other parts of that image. In Daniel chapter 2, we see that the chest and arms are made of silver. The first is gold, but the next part of that image, the chest and the arms, are of gold. Now, what is this silver part of the image, the chest and the the chest and the hands? Which nation does it stand for? The kings that follow are not named, or the kingdoms that follow are not named in Daniel chapter 2. Daniel only identifies the head of gold as Babylon, He identifies the head of gold as Babylon, and he says, thou art that head of gold, O King Nebuchadnezzar. It's talking about you. But the other kings and the other kingdoms are not mentioned by name in Daniel chapter 2, but we are given to understand who they are in Daniel chapter 7. Daniel is a very profound book for the Christian to understand prophecy, because it goes so well with Revelation, with the book of Revelation. So you need to study the book of Daniel very carefully. Let's go to Daniel chapter 7. Daniel chapter 7. There are two verses that we will read in Daniel chapter 7. Firstly, in fact, we'll read more than that. But firstly, let me just clarify something before we move forward about Daniel chapter 7. In Daniel chapter 7, you have Daniel's vision of the four beasts. All right. You have the beast that looks like a lion, the beast that looks like a bear, the beast that looks like a leopard, and then finally the fourth beast, which cannot be described because it's the beast, the Antichrist, the kingdom of the Antichrist. So these are the four beasts that Daniel saw in his vision in Daniel chapter 7. Now, most Bible teachers teach a very wrong view of these four beasts, including, I think, Clarence Larkin, if I'm not mistaken. they teach that the first beast, which is a lion, is the same as the head of gold, which is Nebuchadnezzar. That's what they teach. Just keep this in mind so that you don't get confused later on. They say the head of gold is the same as the first beast in Daniel chapter 7. It is not. And I will show you why it's not. The head of gold in Nebuchadnezzar's vision of that image is certainly Nebuchadnezzar and Babylon. No doubt about that. But in the vision that Daniel saw in Daniel chapter 7, the first beast, a lion, the lion is not the same as the head of gold. Why do I say that? Let's look at chapter 7 verse 1. In the first year of Belshazzar, king of Babylon, Daniel had a dream and visions of his head upon his bed. Then he wrote the dream and told the sum of the matters. Look at the timing of this vision that Daniel had. In the first year of Belshazzar. Here, remember, he said, "Thou art this head of gold." Nebuchadnezzar is the head of gold. Nebuchadnezzar was dead already when Daniel saw this dream. In fact, his grandson, Belshazzar, is now ruling Babylon, and very soon, Babylon would be captured by the Medo-Persians, and it will cease to be a world power. So, in one way, Babylon is already past when Daniel began to see this vision. So this lion is not a reference to Babylon. It's a reference to another nation. But that's not all. Look at another verse. Look at verse 17. Verse 17. These great beasts, which are four kings. Look at what he says. Which shall arise out of the earth, future tense. If the head of gold is the same as the first beast, the lion, then why would Daniel say these four kings shall arise out of the earth in the future? So Daniel is clearly telling us that these four beasts, at the point that he was, were still future. They had not yet come. They shall arise. They shall arise out of the earth. So you must keep that in mind. And now that you understand that Daniel is talking about the future, now we can go ahead and try and identify the kingdoms that ruled Jerusalem in the times of the Gentiles. How did the times of the Gentiles continue? This is how. So let's go to Daniel chapter 7 again and read verse 4. Verse 4. The first was like a lion and had eagle's wings. I beheld till the wings thereof were plugged, and it was lifted up from the earth, and made stand upon the feet as a man, and a man's heart was given to it. You look at that. The first beast that Daniel saw in his vision. These great beasts came up from the sea. They were diverse one from another. They were different one from another. And the first one was like a lion. You need to see this, that historically after Babylon, the next kingdom to seize power in the Middle Eastern area, in a vast area, after Babylon was Medo-Persia. Medo-Persia. Under Cyrus and his vice-regent Darius. Right? You read in the book of Daniel how Darius was king when Daniel was thrown into the den of the lions. But before that, in 2 Chronicles and in Ezra, you read about Cyrus, the king of the Medes and the Persians. So it's the Medo-Persian Empire around 536 BC. 536 BC, Medo-Persia came to power. And if Babylon is the head of gold, the chest and arms of silver is Medo-Persia. And Medo-Persia is likened to a lion. And that's how they were. They were very brave and they were very ferocious fighters. who went and who occupied many, many countries. The Medo-Persian Empire was very great. Its empire was bigger, at least in size, than the Babylonian Empire. And the Medes and the Persians took over Babylon. You know the story, you'll read about it in the book of Daniel, chapter 5. Belshazzar was having a feast with his princes, and they used vessels from the house of God to drink and eat from. And then, of course, they were blaspheming. And then a handwriting appeared on the wall, saying that you have been weighed in the balances, you have been found wanting, your kingdom has been divided to the Medes and the Persians. And that same night, the Medes and the Persians came and occupied Babylon. In fact, it is prophesied much before, and God even prophesied the name of the king who would take over Babylon. And he named him, he said Cyrus. Much before Cyrus was born, God gave the prophecy that there would be a Mede or a Persian king named Cyrus who would defeat Babylon. The brass gates would be opened before him, is the prophecy in the book of Isaiah. And God did exactly that. In that night, the forces of the Medes and the Persians entered Babylon, and they occupied it, they took it over. And that was the beginning of the Medo-Persian Empire, and that's the nation which is depicted as the silver chest and arms in the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw. But you see, from now on, we are also going to look at the prophetic significance of each of these nations that ruled Jerusalem, or at least under whom Jerusalem was. And we're going to see how it is applicable to us today. All right, and it's very, very interesting, as I've said. The prophetic application of the Medo-Persian Empire today is to the nation of England. England is or Britain, Great Britain. Okay, so that is the prophetic application. The lion, remember this first beast is like a lion with eagle's wings. That's a griffin. You remember a griffin is supposedly a mythological creature. Its body is like the body of a lion. It's got the head of an eagle or some other bird. It's got the wings of an eagle. All right, and you will see that for especially in medieval England, their symbol was a griffin. A lion with eagle's wings. That was, the symbol used as, it's not really a national symbol, but many groups used the griffin as a symbol in medieval England. So you can say that England is prophetically, or rather Medo-Persia is prophetically a type of England. And it is true, there are a lot of similarities. A lot of similarities. I will show you a few before we close. See that Medo-Persia, silver, is a type of England. It's a type of England. In fact, today the lion is the national animal of England, of Britain. The lion is the national animal. It's known for its bravery, it's known for its courage, correct? So that's why in many ways England resembles Medo-Persia. Just as the Medes and the Persians took over Babylon, England expanded its empire, and England was the country that was instrumental in defeating the 400-year-old Ottoman Empire that was ruling the world in those days. The Ottoman Empire, I think from 1517 to 1917. Is that 400 years? Yeah, that's right. It ruled that part just like the Medes and the Persians did for 400 years. And their power was broken by England in 1917. I think it was General Allenby of the English Armed Forces that that went and delivered Jerusalem from the power of the Ottoman forces. That's a beautiful story. You should read about it. But then, the thing is, we are looking at similarities between Medo-Persia and England. So England is a type of Medo-Persia, or rather Medo-Persia is a type of England. Now Cyrus, the king of Persia, was mainly instrumental in ordering the Jews to return back to Jerusalem and to build the temple of God. I think with this we will have to close for today. I will explain this because this is going to take a little bit of time, and I'm going to ask you to please pay attention. Look at 2 Chronicles chapter 36. 2 Chronicles 36 and verse 23. Thus saith Cyrus, king of Persia, all the kingdoms of the earth had the Lord God of heaven given me, and he hath charged me to build him an house in Jerusalem, which is in Judah. Who is there among you of all his people? The Lord is God, be with him, and let him go up. You know, when an unsaved Jew reads his Bible and comes to the last page and the last verse in the Hebrew Bible, the words he reads are these, and let him go up. That is, go back to Jerusalem. That's what's happening today. You know, recently in the news, you saw that hundreds of Ethiopian Jews were airlifted from Ethiopia and brought to Israel. Jews from all over the world are just coming back. But it was Cyrus who gave the command. He said, let the children of Judah go back and let them go and rebuild the temple of God. Keep this in mind. It's very important. It's very, very important. England, as I've said, was instrumental in giving the land of Israel back to the Jews to be the national home of the Jews. All right. In 1917, there was something called the Balfour Declaration on November 2nd. The Balfour Declaration. Balfour is the name of a man. And what they did was, you know, like I've said, from 1517 to 1917, Jerusalem was under the Ottoman rule, the Ottoman Empire of Turkey. All right, so they were the ones who had Israel under their control, and they brought in the Palestinians, so-called Palestinians, to live there. Very small groups of Jews lived here and there. It was not a Jewish nation. It was not a home to the Jews for almost 2,000 years, from AD 70 and later on, I think AD 135. The Jews were completely driven out of the land. Only a few places in Israel had a few Jews living the entire period of time for about 2,000 years. But it was mainly under the rule of the Ottoman Empire from 1517 to 1917. But as I've said, General Allenby went and delivered Israel from the Ottoman rule. And then in the month of November, they issued this declaration called the Balfour Declaration, which stated this. Look at this. It says, the Balfour Declaration was a public statement issued by the British government in 1917 during the First World War, announcing support for the establishment of a national home for the Jewish people. So they said, we are going to support a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, then an Ottoman region with a small minority Jewish population. This is what you find about Balfour Declaration on the internet. But you have some very good books written about all these things. You can find them and read them. It's very interesting how God used England to open a door for the Jews to once again go back to their homeland and call it their home, their nation. So all this happened through England. All this happened through England. At the end of the World War I, the Balfour Declaration was made because England and its allies had won the First World War. And so, England is a good type of the Medes and the Persians, who also were instrumental in getting the Jews back to the land. Now, we are going to look a little later at how the present situation, especially with the United States, is there prophetically in the scriptures. As we study these times of the Gentiles, you will see that. These things are there in the scriptures. Don't think that the present times that we are living in and the present nations in power are not mentioned in the scriptures. The Bible is basically a history book. It records not only past history, it also records future history through prophecy. So it's basically a prophetical book. And it covers the whole of human history, right from the beginning to the end of this earth as we know it now. The Bible covers the history of the whole earth. You want to know what significance the nations in power have today in the Bible? You search the scriptures, you will find it. And the Lord willing, we will continue studying it. Maybe I'll just give you one more before we close for today. So that's the first one. Medo-Persian is a type of England. So that's the second nation to have rule over Jerusalem in the times of the Gentiles, during the times of the Gentiles. Now please keep this in mind. We are talking about the times of the Gentiles. That's the main subject. And we are looking at what happened in the times of the Gentiles. Look at Daniel chapter 7 and verse 5. Daniel 7 verse 5. And behold, another beast, a second like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, Arise, devour much flesh. So this is the third one. And in Nebuchadnezzar's dream, the third part of that image was brass. And this second beast in Daniel's vision is like a bear. This is a lion. The next one is a bear. It's a bear, and this is brass. And in history, we know that the empire that succeeded the Medo-Persian Empire was Greece. Greece, I think around 330 BC. I want you to also notice how the metals that were in that Colossus diminish in value as time goes by. They don't become better and better. They become worse and worse. First it's gold, then it's silver, now it's brass. Then it's iron afterwards. And then clay finally. That's how nations deteriorate, decline, diminish, degenerate. They don't become better. Mankind is not becoming better because of their technology. Mankind is not becoming better because of knowledge. Mankind is becoming worse and worse. What God said about man in the book of Genesis chapter 8, that his imagination is evil from the youth, is still applicable. That doesn't change. Man's imaginations, in spite of all the advancements, are still evil. And all these advancements in technology really has a lot of evil behind it, evil motives behind it. And Jesus Christ is going to come and put an end to it. But you see this, Greece is brass. The belly and thighs of the image is made of brass. All right, so the head of gold, then you have the arms and chest of silver, then the belly and the thighs of brass. That's Greece, the Macedonian Empire under, of course, Alexander the Great. Here you have Cyrus. And here you have Alexander. If you want to get into the details of all this, you can read the book of Daniel, and Daniel covers the whole history of these times. Not only these times, but even of the so-called silent years between Malachi and Matthew. Daniel covers it all in chapter 11 of the book of Daniel. You can read and study it and you will understand it. But this is Alexander. We know that after he died very young, his kingdom was divided into 4 parts. His 4 generals divided it into 4 parts. And the Antichrist is certainly related to Greece, Medo-Persia, and Babylon. He's related to all 3 of these nations. And you will see that. But the prophetic application of the bear is to Russia. What happened was that after the Balfour Declaration was made, England tried to go back on its promise. And that was the end of England as a world power. The empire of which it was said that, the sun will never set on this empire, set. After the Second World War, England was no longer that superpower that it was. The great English Empire, the British Empire, came to an end. Yes, World War II, certainly England did have the upper hand because America was backing it. That's the only reason. But otherwise, England was already completely infiltrated by the Jesuits. You need to understand this. A lot of Christians don't understand this. Here in India, I'm talking about it in the Indian context. When the English first came, they came with the intention of taking the wealth of this nation. There's no doubt about that. You cannot defend them saying, oh, they were good people, they were Christians. No, they were not. Even if they were Christians, their intentions were not to do anything good for us. It is the missionaries from England, like William Carey, and missionaries from other parts of Europe, like Germany, had come to India. It is those individuals that you have to give the credit to who had the burden to bring the gospel of the grace of God to the people of our nation. Okay, you must remember this. And then secondly, these missionaries came and gave us the word of God. And if you know your history, the English government did not allow William Carey to enter India, at least in the parts where English rule was established in India. So he had to go to a part of India which was not under British control. I think it was under the control of the Dutch people, if I'm not mistaken, or some other European country. He went into that part, and then later on he somehow gained access to the rest of India, through God's help, of course. So you must keep that in mind. England was great for only one reason. England became very great for one reason, because of the King James Bible. And once England started rejecting the King James Bible, God started rejecting it. And the final rejection of this great empire was when they withdrew support to the Jewish people. And they went back on their word. And God was done with England. But immediately after the Second World War, after 1945, we know, yes, America had turned out to be a great superpower, but it was still Russia which was that great power which influenced world politics. Russia was a great superpower. And the bear is certainly symbolic of Russia. It says this on the internet. It says, on one hand, Russians themselves appreciate the bear for its raw power and cunning, and bears are very often used as mascots or as a part of a design on a logo. Later, the bear was taken up as the symbol of the United Russian Party, which had dominated political life in Russia since the early 2000s. The Eurasian brown bear is the national animal of Russia. So you find a lot of similarities between Greece and Russia. If you see, the main thing about a bear is the way it moves. It can really move. And Alexander moved in that fashion. Right? He came all the way to India. And he established his rule from Greece all the way to India, went back to Babylon and died on the way. So, Russia is the modern day Greece, you could say. And the Greece of those times is a type of modern day Russia. So you have the head of gold, the hands and chest of silver, and then the belly and thighs of brass. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. But prophetically, Medo-Persia is a type of England, and Greece is a type of modern day Russia. Now, since we have come so far, very quickly let me finish this part. After Russia, the next world power, after Greece, the next beast that is mentioned in the book of Daniel. Daniel chapter 7 and verse 6. Daniel 7 verse 6. After this I beheld, and lo, another like a leopard, which had upon the back of it 4 wings of a fowl. The beast had also 4 heads, and dominion was given to it. So the next beast that Daniel saw was a leopard. Now, going back to Nebuchadnezzar's dream of that image, the 4th part of the image were the legs of iron. The legs of iron. So gold, silver, brass, and then iron. What is that iron symbolic of? Which nation does it talk about? Well, historically, we know that it is Rome. Historically, it is Rome that ruled Jerusalem, after Alexander. And this is iron, and this is depicted by a leopard. This is depicted by a leopard. Remember this, again, Rome is depicted by the legs of iron. Iron symbolizes Rome because Rome ruled the world with an iron hand. Certainly, iron is the best symbol for the Roman Empire. But you see, the leopard also is a very correct animal chosen to depict Rome, because the leopard is an integrated animal. And it stands for Rome because Rome was integrated. What do I mean by that? Roman Empire extended to Asia, Africa, and Europe. All 3 continents. The Roman empires, spread through all these continents. So you have Shem, Ham, and Japheth. So Rome ruled over all 3 races of mankind. The Roman Empire stretched from Britain, Great Britain, all the way to Egypt. So here you have Europe and Africa. Then it spread all the way from Spain, Europe again, right to Babylon, Asia. It covered all 3 continents, major continents. That is Europe, Africa, and Asia. That's how the Roman Empire spread in all these 3 continents. Now, Western, of course, we know that later on the Roman Empire was divided into the Western Empire and the Eastern Empire. But the Western Empire fell to the so-called barbarians in around 395 AD, the 4th century AD. Okay, it fell. But when it fell, we know that it turned into a mystery form. Just as the kingdom of heaven of the Old Testament was transformed into the spiritual kingdom of God, the mystery kingdom of God in the New Testament times. The kingdom of the devil transformed from Rome, the Roman Empire, into the Roman Catholic Church. So you must keep that in mind. But the prophetical application, the prophetic application is important. England ruled, then Russia was a major world power, but then it is America. America. Prophetically, Rome is a type of America. Why is it? Because America is also the most integrated nation on the earth today. You have Asians, Europeans, and Africans. All of them, right? Shem, Ham, and Japheth. That's America today. Look at this. The leopard has basically three colors. Correct? The leopard has three colors. What are the three colors? It is yellow. Basically, that's the color of the skin. Then you have the white underbelly. And then thirdly, you have the black spots. Oh, the leopard. The leopard is very important for you to understand even the Antichrist and the mark of the beast. The leopard is a cat, correct? And of course you have the catholics, addicted to the cat, the Catholics, and they are related to this. I'm not talking about the people, please don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about the Catholic people, I'm talking about the Catholic system, the Catholic hierarchy, or the Pope and the cardinals and the archbishops and the bishops and all these people. That's the system, the evil Roman Catholic system through which the Antichrist would probably come. So they're all connected to the leopard. But you see, basically, the leopard is made of three colors, yellow, white, and black. Shem, Japheth, and Ham. Now, those are the colors of these races. Shem is like yellow. And you have Ham, who is black. The color of Ham is black. And Japheth is white. So America is what is depicted in this animal, the leopard. Because America is also an integrated nation. It is known for its integration, as Rome was known for its integration. Rome had people from all three continents, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. America have people from all three continents, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. But this also tells you something very, very important. What does it tell you? It tells you that America will be the last superpower. America will be the last superpower in this world before the Antichrist comes to establish his reign on the earth. So what we have done here is we have been looking at the times of the Gentiles. We are looking at the times of the Gentiles not only in the past, but we are looking at the times of the Gentiles even in the present time. Even in the present time, yes. Because like I've said, Jerusalem is still not free fully because the Temple Mount is not under the control of the Jews. But look at this, you have America today, and the next beast that Daniel saw in his vision is the Antichrist, the fourth beast. So immediately after Rome is the Antichrist. Now this is very, very significant. You see, Rome was in power from 100 BC to 395 BC when the western part of the Roman Empire fell. And then around the 12th or 13th century, the Eastern Empire also fell to the Turks. Correct? So Rome began as a political power and was destroyed in the 4th century AD. But that's not the end of Rome. Rome continued to be in power throughout the church age for 2000 years as the Roman Catholic Church. Okay? And then in the 20th century and the 21st century, you have America, and Rome is a type of America. And the next kingdom that's going to come through Rome is the last part in the image that Nebuchadnezzar saw in his dream, and that would be the Antichrist. The Antichrist is coming very soon. We are in the church age now, but the Antichrist is coming very soon. And this is iron and clay. Iron and clay. And this is a beast which cannot be described fully. But the most interesting thing is, if Daniel is not able to describe this beast, but John does in Revelation chapter 13 verse 2. And he tells you that this beast, the Antichrist, which Daniel could not describe, is a mixture of a lion, a bear, and a leopard. Isn't that interesting? These are the three beasts that this beast is made up of. You'll read about, you can go to Revelation chapter 13 and read verse 2, verses 1 and 2. You will see that the fourth beast of Daniel's vision, and the last part, the feet and the toes of the image of Nebuchadnezzar in his dream, which is made up of iron and clay, is the kingdom of the Antichrist. It is made up of the lion, bear, and leopard. So that means the Antichrist is connected to Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greece. It's already Rome. We are not saying it's connected to Medo-Persia, Greece, and Rome. We are saying it's connected to Babylon, Medo-Persia, and Greece, because Rome is the country from which the Antichrist will ultimately come. That's why. So they're all connected to each other. They're all connected to each other. Now there is something very, very interesting that we are going to that I'm going to tell you in a few minutes before I close. Look at Revelation chapter 11 verse 2. It says, "But the court which is without the temple leave out and measure it not, for it is given unto the Gentiles, and the holy city shall they tread under foot 42 months." So here, this is the end of the times of the Gentiles. The times of the Gentiles will end at the time of the second coming of Jesus Christ, the second advent. This is the rapture. This is the tribulation. The tribulation. And John says that the angel told him not to measure the court of the temple there in Revelation chapter 11, because for 42 months it will be trodden underfoot by the Gentiles. The last part of the tribulation, the most important part of the tribulation, it will be tread underfoot for 42 months, 3.5 years. That's when the Antichrist sets up the Abomination of Desolation in the temple in Jerusalem. And for 42 months, he will continue that abomination. And when Jesus Christ comes back, just like the dream that Nebuchadnezzar saw, in which he saw that a stone that is cut without hands comes and strikes the great image at the feet, and the whole image crumbles and is destroyed. Jesus Christ comes back and destroys the kingdom of the Antichrist. Not just here, but the whole kingdom of the Antichrist is destroyed. And with that, the times of the Gentiles would end. In Daniel chapter 2 verse 33, it says, "His legs of iron, his feet part of iron and part of clay." So the Antichrist's kingdom is a continuation of Rome. The legs of iron, but then the last part, the feet, are made of iron and clay. And that's because, again, we don't have the time to get into it, the iron and clay do not mix. In Daniel chapter 2, it says that the reason why they don't mix is because one is clay, the other is iron. They don't mix together at all. And the kingdom of the Antichrist will be partly strong and partly weak. But the most important thing is, it says there, that they will try to mingle with the seed of men. So what we're going to see here again are the days of Noah. The days of Noah is what we're going to see when the sons of God came down and married the daughters of men, and the children born to them were giants. And in all probability, the 10 toes in Daniel's or in Nebuchadnezzar's image, the 10 toes are the same as the 10 horns on the beast in Revelation chapter 13 and Revelation chapter 17. And the 10 horns are called 10 kings in Revelation 17. So the 10 toes are 10 kings. These are not human kings. These are part human, part fallen angelic being offspring kings, if I may put it like that. That's what's coming on the earth in the times of the Gentiles. But again, the most important thing is, you must remember that when the Antichrist comes, he not only takes over Jerusalem, but he goes to the temple. Remember this, I've said, the main thing is about the temple. The times of the Gentiles have to do with the temple of God in Jerusalem. In the beginning, I told you that all these things have prophetic significance. Now, I'm not going into details about the kingdom of the Antichrist because that's just too much of information to put into one Bible study. But you can go back to Daniel chapter 7, read verses 7 and 8. It talks about a fourth beast, dreadful and terrible, strong exceedingly. It had great iron teeth, related to Rome. The Antichrist has iron teeth, not the Antichrist, but the kingdom has iron teeth, related to Rome, which is iron. And you will read all those things there. But the thing is, you must always keep this in mind, that these things have relevance to the present as well. It's not just to the past. It has relevance to the present. And what is it? Today, the hottest topic in geopolitics is Jerusalem, as it's always been, right? And the most important part of that discussion is the Temple Mount, as I've said before. And as I've said before, the Temple Mount is under the control of the Muslims. They claim that it's the third most holiest site for Islam. But to the Jews, it's the most important site and the only important site which is most holy to them. And it's not under their control because the times of the Gentiles are still there. But you know what? A lot of people, Jews, they have been writing many articles, of course, comparing Donald Trump, the President of America, to Cyrus, the king who made the proclamation that the Jews should go back to Jerusalem. Now we have seen that it was England that actually declared that Israel is the homeland of the Jews, and they made provision for the Jews to go back. But no other country on earth in history supported the Jews like America. It is America that supported the Jews the most. Because it was not until the Second World War that the Jews really started going back to Israel, and the main player in Second World War was the United States of America, against Germany, of course. And by then, America was the world power at the end of World War II. What I'm trying to say is this: these Jews are saying that the American president is like Cyrus, the king of the Medes and the Persians. They're just not making comparisons. You know what they do? They go to their Torah and they use something called Bible codes, and they of course have this gematria, the numerical value of Hebrew letters. They use all those things and they make it look like Cyrus and the American president are just the same. Remember, in fact, in the Bible, Cyrus is called a Messiah. In the book of Isaiah, he's called the Anointed One. God anointed him. Anointed is the word Messiah. He's called a Messiah, and they used all these Bible codes and used the numerical value of letters, and they say that the president, Donald Trump, the president of America, has an anointing on him by God. Now, all this we will not get into. I'm just mentioning it because you may have heard of these things. Ignore those things. That's not important. What's important is that how the Jews are looking today to America, the last great superpower, to help them to get rid of Gentile domination of Israel. Now let me tell you this. To his credit, the present American president is the only one who had the courage to acknowledge Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. I think around close to 200 nations voted against America and denounced America for acknowledging Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. But he did it. He took a stand and he did it. Just like Cyrus, right? But not only did he do that, he went ahead and moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. A tremendous thing to do in support of Israel. Now, all these things may look like very casual things to some of you, but they have great prophetic significance. It's all moving to one end. You must be able to look at these things. And the problem is sometimes some of these very exciting things happen and then nothing happens for a long period of time. So you think, oh, that was nothing, that's a dud. No, it's not. God takes time to do things. And you must be able to put these things together. Now, he has done that. It's a great move significantly. Never in the last 70 odd years that Israel had become a nation did any other nation have the guts to say Jerusalem is the capital of the Jews. They all support the supposed underdog, the Palestinians. They say, oh, it's their right. And Israel is looked upon as the colonizers, as recently a Saudi prince termed Israel. The colonizers. No, they are not colonizers. It's their rightful home. It's their land. It's their nation. That Temple Mount is the most holiest spot on earth for them. It's a land God promised to their father Abraham. And he's going to keep his promise and give that land to them for sure. A lot of foolish Christians think God is done with Israel. Look at what's happening in the world today. You think God is done with Israel? You must be as blind as a bat to believe that. You can't see anything at all. You not only can't read the scriptures and understand them, you can't look at, the political situation and understand anything. You're blind, really. Open your eyes. Ask God to help you to put some eye salve on your eyes and read the scriptures and understand. It's all moving towards one end that God has purposed. Immediately after the rapture of the church, the tribulation that comes on the earth, and God starts dealing with the Jews again. But another interesting thing is that all these ultra-Orthodox rabbis are not satisfied with Donald Trump just moving the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. You know what they are doing next? In fact, they have written a letter to him. They have sent a delegation to him requesting that he help in the rebuilding of the third temple. I don't know about you, when I read these things, the hair on my hands stand. I get goosebumps because I know these things have prophetic significance. And things are moving faster than before. Israel is a nation. Jerusalem is now under the control of Israel. Remember, Israel became a nation in 1948, 14th May. Israel became an independent nation. But Jerusalem was not under its control until 1967, the Six-Day War, and they took over Jerusalem. By the way, all these are Jubilee years. Most of these important dates are Jubilee years. So 1967, Jerusalem came under the power of the Israelites, but still, the Temple Mount, That's the next thing that you have to look for. You see how God does? Yes, it took many years, many years. 1948, Israel became a nation. 1967, Jerusalem came under the control. But now, since 67 till today, the Temple Mount is still under the control of the Jordanians and the Palestinians. The next thing that's going to happen is, I do not know if God's going to use Donald Trump or somebody else. I really don't care. But the next thing that's going to happen is this. Somehow or the other, the Jews will manage to build the third temple. Now, I do not know if we are going to see it happen before the rapture. We might see it, because you know that the Temple Institute in Israel has already prepared everything they need to begin temple worship. In fact, they even dedicated the altar, I think last year or a couple of years ago, with an animal sacrifice. They have a red heifer ready to be sacrificed. They have everything. They have the priest's clothes, they have the menorah, they have the table of showbread. All these things are ready. All the instruments they need for the altar of sacrifice, they have it all. The only thing missing, of course, is the Ark of the Covenant. The Lord willing, maybe we should do a short study on that. Where is the Ark of the Covenant? That's very interesting too. Will they find it? I do not know. But they are ready to build the temple. Everything is ready. You know what that tells you, brethren? Very, very close to the rapture. In fact, I'll say this. If you see the beginning of the temple, or the beginning of the building of the temple, you better pack your bags. You're going to leave very soon. The Lord's coming. The Lord's coming very soon. So look for that, because that's a sign that the rapture is very soon. And of course, once the rapture takes place, the tribulation begins and the kingdom of the Antichrist is established. And in the last part of the tribulation, one final time, the temple that is rebuilt is trodden underfoot and the abomination of desolation is set up. But the stone cut without hands comes back like 1 billion nuclear bombs going off, comes and destroys that great edifice that was built over the past 6,000 years by the devil. Completely destroys it. And God establishes finally His kingdom on the earth, the kingdom of heaven, the earthly Davidic kingdom on which Jesus Christ, the Son of God, sits and rules. I know we have taken just too much of time, but I thought I'd rather finish this. I know some of you cannot sit for so long and watch the whole thing, but I hope that you'll at least watch it in bits and parts and learn some of these things that we have studied today. Thank you very much. The Lord bless you.